Hi, Will.
Hey, how are you?
I'm good. How are you doing? It's
Good,
nice.
thank you. What's up, guys? Welcome back to Wild Willie's Book Reviews. Today I'm here with the fabulous Vivien Gorham. And is there anything that you would like to say about yourself?
About myself, well, one of the things I love about being an author is meeting with my readers, interacting with them, especially my young readers like you. So this is very exciting for me to do this today. And it's kind of cool that you're a guy because, the vast majority of horse book readers are, I think, are girls. And so it's just really nice to know that, some guys like my books too. So
Yeah, for sure.
as far as me, I guess I'd say that I've loved to write since a very young age. I actually found some old poems that I wrote in grade three at my parents' house a few years ago. And, surprisingly, they weren't that bad. So, anyway, I kept writing sort of poems and little stories all through my school years. And then, when I got through high school and into university and getting married, raising kids, working, I kind of stopped writing for quite a long time. And then sometime around in my mid 40s, I decided, yeah, I have this dream. Actually, I have this dream to write a novel, which I think that sort of came to me in my early teens, maybe around the same age as you will. And yeah, so I'm just gonna, so I decided, okay, I'm going to go back to it. And I started writing again. And then after a while, I finally got that idea for my first book, Touch of Gold. And then, of course, it was a few more years before it actually got published. But yeah, so
Yeah.
that's, my writer story.
Yeah. So if you guys don't know, this is the first book that I read from Vivien Gorham, Spirit of Summerwood. I really enjoyed that book. And then most recently, I also read Touch of Gold, and both of the reviews are on my YouTube channel, so make sure you guys check that out as well. You mentioned Touch of Gold as your first book. What do you think was your favorite part about writing that book?
Um, Gosh, I would say just sort of finding out what the story was going to be, because the idea that first came to me was really just an image. This image of a lonely Palomino horse standing alone in a field, looking neglected. So it kind of popped into my head one day. I don't know exactly where or when. And then, it seemed like then this young girl showed up on her bicycle. And I just sort of had this urge to finish their story, to write their story down. So that was really cool. I really like all the stages of writing. It's really fun to just discover characters and parts of the story, and just to like come up with Tamarack stables and the people there, which reminded me a lot of stables that I wrote at when I was young. And one of the really cool parts actually was after the story was finished and even published, I sort of discovered that some of the characters were based on horses or people that I actually knew back in the day. Like the character of Val Scott, the owner of Tamarack Stables. I realized she was basically, or her appearance anyway, was basically based on a rider that I used to see in the shows that I would go to, a show jumping rider who was very successful and very exciting. And actually, the horse that she rode was called Peppermint Twist, who is a character in Touch of Gold. So she is actually a real horse that existed back then. And they used to always win in open jumper classes. So that was really fun to discover that. And I also, even later than that, I realized that the main horse character, Touch of Gold, who is called Peach, nicknamed Peach in the story, she was actually inspired by this beautiful Palomino mare that I used to ride when I was in university, occasionally called Sundown, who was one of the sweetest, nicest, most fun, beautiful horses I ever rode. She was actually one of my heart horses, I would say. So it's fun to discover those little things kind of as you go along and after the fact.
Yeah, so you mentioned that you were always writing in school. Do you think that your love of writing inspired you to read, or maybe your love of reading inspired you to write?
I would say it was probably my love of reading that inspired me to write because I was an avid reader and I came from a family of avid readers, and my parents very much encouraged us to read. So I would say, yeah, I mean, that started at a super young age. And then, yeah, I think I probably started writing when I was told in kindergarten, to write a poem or a story. And I realized I liked doing that. So I just kind of kept on doing it. Yeah. But we were all readers, and I'm still a very avid reader. Just
Yeah, and sorry, what was it?
just like you, I'm sure.
Yeah, well, like I said, I really enjoyed both of the books that I've read so far, and hopefully I get to read some more of your work as well.
Thank you.
Um, I really enjoyed In Spirit of Summerwood, kind of the entire story and like the message. Do you think there was like when you started to write it, do you think that you kind of planned to go in that direction, or did you kind of just go where it went, really?
That was another funny thing. The way that story started was with a setting, actually. I always would walk my dog in my favorite urban park, which is called the Cole Harbour Heritage Park in Cole Harbour, Nova Scotia. And I always used to think that this is a perfect place to have a stable because of the trails and the ocean, the harbor right nearby, and hills, rolling hills and trees, and yeah, lovely trails. I just always used to think as I walked my dog, I should be on horseback. So I kind of decided one day that I was going to create an imaginary stable there and write the story of that stable. And, I don't exactly remember how the main character of Aislinn came up, but I remember thinking that wouldn't it be fun to write a story about a summer horse camp? Something that I always wanted to do and never got to do. So I think I was creating the stable and the summer camp that I would have liked to have there. Um, so so yeah, and then it just kind of developed from there. As far as the ideas went, the other thing was that when I used to go to the Cole Harbour Heritage Park, one time I went there and I noticed that there was an archaeological dig going on, and that I was very curious about that. And that's when I found out about the former Cole Harbour Poor Farm that used to exist in the place where the park is now. And when I was walking my dog, I came across the little cemetery that's featured in the book with all the dozen white crosses, unmarked graves. And I just thought, wow, that's a story, and I would like people to know about this farm. So many people don't know about the poor farms, and there were 20 of them in the province way back in the day. And actually, the Cole Harbour one burned down in 1929. But I just thought this would be so interesting to bring that into my book and bring in, the remnants of that Cole Harbour Poor Farm, where the I don't know what you call it, where the water system used to be, and the cemetery, and there are some old foundations there. And there's actually a beautiful big tree overlooking the water that was there at that time. And so yeah, that theme came up. Now, the Mi'kmaq theme was never an intention of mine initially. But I'm also very interested in Mi'kmaq history and culture, local and otherwise. And I just thought, I think that the character of Gabe just popped into my head one day. And definitely the character of Starlin, she was never planned. And she popped up into my head. And this happens to me frequently, that characters will just show up in a story I'm already writing. And so then, I had to tell their story. I kind of like the idea of a ghost, and just having a bit of an adventure and a spiritual aspect to the story. So all those things kind of came into it.
Do you think that in the future you might have another book kind of like Spirit of Summerwood with like the same characters, maybe at a different location, or has that ever like came across your mind?
That hasn't. I'm not planning a sequel to it, but I wasn't planning a sequel to Touch of Gold either. And about a year ago, I got a bunch of ideas for not only a sequel, but two sequels and a prequel to Touch of Gold. Now, whether I'll ever write them or not, I don't know. Right now, I'm working on what I call an adventure romance for teenagers, a young adult book, which is actually set in Alberta and featuring the wild horses out there, which hardly anybody knows about. But, and then I have another book planned after that. But I get these ideas and then I just write them all down and I save them. And more ideas come into my head every now and then, often when I'm walking my dog or just kind of hanging out, not doing too much. And so I could kind of see it, but right now it's not planned.
Yeah, for sure. When you're writing, do you kind of have like a place where you like to go to write, or do you kind of just wherever the idea comes, write it down and go from there?
Well, I actually, where I am right now in my dining room is my office, and that's where I do most of my writing. I like to have a quiet place where I won't be disturbed, and I like to write longhand on my big dining room table, and I like to look out my big windows. And so this is kind of my happy place for writing. Um, as far as ideas go, they will pop up anywhere, and I always carry a little notebook with me, and I keep one by my bedside too so I can jot those things down. Now, interesting thing that kind of happened to me that led to the book that I'm working on now is that every year my writers group and I go to one of their cottages and we have a writers retreat. And I brought Summerwood actually at that time, that summer, and I was going to edit it. I had finished the first or second draft or something, and I was going to work on revising it. And I sat outside looking over the lake, and all of a sudden I got this idea for the book I'm working on now, and I just sat out there in a nice chair and wrote the first 6 pages of it. And basically, those first 6 pages are still the first 6 pages. I've changed them a little bit, but so it can happen anywhere. So far, I haven't been able to really like write in airports and stuff. Sometimes, you have to wait for hours in an airport, and I think I should be writing, but that hasn't really happened. So it's mostly here at home in the dining room.
Yeah. So when you were when you were writing some of your books like Cut Your Gold and Spirit of Summerwood, do you think that you've had some inspiration? I know you mentioned that some of the characters were based on people that you've met in the past or horses that you've met in the past. Do you think that anything other than that has been kind of relatable to you? Like I know you mentioned the cemetery as well.
Gosh, I guess, well, with 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 both of those books, I guess a lot of it has to do with my love of horses. My books have so far always involved horses. My latest one is not. I guess Touch of Gold was very much of the story of Jamie and Peach and their relationship. That was a simpler story to write. Because of that, it kind of was about their story and how they developed their bond and everything. And then with Summerwood, sort of some different themes came in, like the environmental theme when the stable was threatened, which is also another great interest of mine. And then the Mi'kmaq theme, and then I just kind of was interested in having a ghost angle, which had never, come to me before. So yeah, I guess I'm all about a lot of my writing is about relationships, whether it's between people and animals, people and people, or a place and a person or a group of people. So yeah, I don't really have like particular things that came up that was relatable other than the horses and the characters. But yeah, sometimes themes pop in there too. So
Yeah, for sure. Is there anything that you want anybody like writing to know? Like, for example, if they're struggling just writing something, is there any tips that you have for them?
well, I would just say to keep at it and don't give up and don't expect your writing to be good right away. Um, a lot of people they feel discouraged, when they start to write and it's just not what's in their head doesn't match what's coming out on the paper. And what you should do is suspend your judgment, just get your ideas down, just keep writing, and follow your dream. If you have a dream to be a writer, don't worry about whether you're going to be good enough. Don't worry about whether you're going to make a career out of it. Just simply keep writing. And if you feel like you're stuck, what works for me often is just going for a walk, or sometimes I just lie down and I sort of let ideas come to me. Take a break, things like that. Try not to struggle with it too much and staring at a blank page or whatever. And I would also say, as I mentioned before, keep a notebook with you at all times, a small one, and just you don't have to like sit down and work on a story. You can just jot down an idea or something that interests you, or a snippet of dialogue, or something you hear or read, that you think you might want to pursue. So basically, I say just try not to judge your writing too much. Just keep doing it and don't give up. Just, especially if you really want to be a writer, just keep doing it. Believe in yourself, I bet, basically, because I believe in you.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's great advice, and I'm glad to hopefully that reaches somebody that needs that and that helps them out. Is there anything else that you would like anybody to know about you or any of your books?
I just want to say one more thing about writing tips. The other thing to do is that has worked really well for me is to join a writers group and to have them to talk to. It's not for everybody, especially if you're writing a long novel. It's a little harder, but just sharing ideas with other writers, sharing struggles, sharing achievements. It's made a huge difference, and you can really get some new perspectives by doing that. Even if it's just a friend, one friend who's maybe another reader, that's a really good thing. So I just wanted to add that in with the tips.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So sorry, what was your question again?
Yeah, so is there just anything that you would like anybody watching to know about you or any of your books?
Um, hmm. I, I'm not really sure. I guess just that, well, as far as my books go, they're pretty horsey, but I've noticed that lots of people who aren't that horsey do like the books. They have stories with them and they like the relationships and stuff. So, I guess I would encourage people to give them a try, even if you're not particularly horsey. I don't know. Are you horsey, Will?
Not like super horsey, but I do really like horses. So
That's cool.
yeah.
Yeah, and anybody who likes animals are going to like them as well. I think
Yeah, for sure.
there's dogs, there's a cat,
Yeah.
animals. So I guess there's that. And about me is just that I love to write. I'm going to keep writing as long as I can. I hope anybody who has a dream to be a writer like I did and do, will continue and go with that. I kind of wish I hadn't had that big gap where I wasn't really writing. So if you're young, keep on writing and don't give it up. So yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you so much for your time, and yeah, thank you for coming.
Well, thank you so much, Will. It's been wonderful to talk to you and wonderful to meet you. And I'm just so thrilled that you do this for us authors. It's a great thing, and happy reading. Keep on reading. And yeah, it's been really fun.